Welcome to the Passive House Network Conference 2022, session on housing, racism, community development, and passive house. I am your first presenter, Eddy Voltaire, and we will be taking a look through history at racist policies, housing, and racism.
Now we turn to racial tensions in America.
I'm a survivor of the Tulsa Race Massacre. Today, I'm visiting Washington, D.C. for the first time in my life. I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921.
In the working out of a great national program that seeks the primary good of the greater number, it is true that the toes of some people are being stepped on and are going to be stepped on.
No doubt you've noticed that on the wall there are the prints of 4 men. Men that I considered, in my book, about the 4 top Americans of the past. They are Franklin, Washington, Lincoln, and Lee. And anybody who ever tries to put me in any other relationship with respect to General Lee is mistaken.
I was arrested on December 1st, 1955 for refusing to stand up on the orders of the bus driver after the white seats had been occupied in the front.
Roy Bryant and J.W. Milam were tried and found not guilty by an all-white jury. A few months later, protected by double jeopardy, they confessed to the murder in a paid interview.
All we say to America is be true to what you said on paper.
The major problem we are confronting today, the major problem people throughout this country are confronting is the problem of racism.
They are not just gangs of kids anymore. They are often the kinds of kids that are called super predators.
Yes, I think this is part of the story that many people are unaware of. The ways in which poor people, particularly poor folks of color, are targeted by our criminal justice system, arrested for extremely minor offenses, the very sorts of crimes that occur with equal frequency in middle-class communities or on college campuses, but go largely ignored.
If there is anyone out there who still doubts that America is a place where all things are possible, who still wonders if the dream of our founders is alive in our time, who still questions the power of our democracy, tonight is your answer.
You broke the contract when for 400 years we played your game and built your wealth. You broke the contract when we built our wealth again on our own by our bootstraps in Tulsa, and you dropped bombs on us. When we built it in Rosewood and you came in and you slaughtered us. You broke the contract.
President Trump retweeted a video of supporters at a retirement community in Florida. One man can be heard chanting the white supremacist slogan, "White Power." White Power! Hours later, the president deleted the tweet, but the damage was already done.
There is racial insensitivity. People have to be made aware The reason why people are on the streets isn't just some elusive housing or market phenomenon.
Police say a total of 13 people were shot in what they're calling a racially motivated attack. 10 people died on the scene.
Thank you, Eddy, for providing that very helpful and useful, well-researched and historic view and timeline that really shows the through line to today of the policies, both economic and business practices that have led to where we are right now. So thank you so much for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Dr. McPhail. I am the executive director of the nonprofit, the LEEP initiative. LEEP stands for Leadership and Engineering Equitable Participation. And we started off this session with looking at what Eddy just shared of the historic view for how we got to where we are here in the United States. And I think one of the things that we want to further figure out how to address is the underlying issue of not having equitable participation. So I would like to talk to you today about the LEEP initiative and how we're trying to address a lot of the historic wrongs that have been seen throughout our history here in the United States and correcting it through having an equitable participatory system within the real estate industry. With that, I'll get started. We appreciate you having us here at the Passive House Network National Building Conference. The LEEP initiative is an emerging system to allow for better access and equitable participation within the social and economic context of real estate. So there's the key issue that our first presenter was able to show that we really wanted to try to address, and that is the local communities that already exist typically have unequal access or limited social mobility due to lack of social and economic opportunities from a given real estate development project that limits their social mobility and limits the long-term community growth of the residents who are already there. The two key questions we want to address are, first, one, for all of the stakeholders that exist, both paid professionals and those who are unpaid, such as community members and community institutions, can we come up with a standardized best practice guidebook that everyone can agree on is a good way to move forward for real estate development that does allow more equitable participation, more ideas to come in that can go into fruition and that are profitable, and then take that and turn that into a certification and rating system for developers to be able to use so that they can have more sustainable and equitable projects that allow for more inclusive growth of the community at large. In order to determine this, we took a couple of years and did a lot of research to try to figure out where we are in the lay of the land. Our first presenter did a really great job of showing some of the policies and business practices that already existed from the political landscape. We looked at more informational interviews, secondary sources, articles, books, conferences, symposiums, et cetera, and conducted a lot of research in terms of partnering with organizations, interviewing them, particularly the U.S. Green Building Council, which is the founder of LEED certification, one of the most well-known environmental sustainability certification programs out there in the industry, as well as started to look and solicit for pilot projects to see what went really great, what didn't go so great, what were some of the hurdles and roadblocks that were preventing more participation, and how to address some of those through identifying the root problems, coming up with strategies, and coming up with a solution, one piece of which will be a certification system to move forward. So the answer to our question is, yes, we can fix this ourselves, but it'll take a little bit of work to get there. And the framework that we want to use is the LEEP initiative. Again, it stands for Leadership and Engineering Equitable Participation. And it's really looking at creating a sustainable real estate development that focuses heavily on economic and community-based efforts within the framework of a development project. So that way we can have socially responsible and responsive development projects to the local community that is already in existence. Looking to our other programs, there's a lot of certification systems out there, in particular on the environmentally focused regime of the development process, but there are several that exist that are exemplify all of the things that we would like to see well done from the social and economic aspect. So we lean heavily on the LEED certification system. Green Globes is another, Built Green is yet another, as well as all of the different systems out there. There's multiple throughout the nation that have primarily tried to address one or two aspects specifically honed in on what their community needs were from the social aspect. So taking all of this information and using the scorecards that were created by the Green Globes and LEED certification systems, we are then structuring the LEEP program in two ways. First, through understanding what the best practices are already in practice, those that we want to see in practice, and those that we would like to see in the future to be adopted, both locally and nationally. And then two, turning it and converting it into a project rating and certification system to already address the existing inequities in a particular location where development is proposed to go, as well as how to promote greater social and economic benefits for all stakeholders, both paid professionals as well as the community at large. LEEP is different from some of the other guidelines and books out there that may already address some aspects of the social well-being of a community. One is primarily that this approach is quite comprehensive, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. Another piece is looking at the inclusivity that we have. We are proposing to have a system from the very start of a project, from the pre-design phase, all the way through the occupancy and final use of a building and community. This allows to have more continued engagement with the community and thereby allowing for more cost-effective solutions through that collaboration. Many developers and those within the industry will already know that trying to go against a community can be quite expensive, both through litigation and negative PR, as well as ineffective discourse. So finding a cost-effective solution that can try to mitigate most of this, if not do well for everyone, is in everyone's best interest. So how are we proposing to do all of this? Well, we still have a lot of work to do to flesh out all of the details, but we have 6 pillars in which our framework is based on, and I'll talk a little bit about each one of them. The first one is small and local business utilization. This is focused primarily on the small businesses that already exist in a local community, as well as those who are just starting out and want to grow in their own community, making sure they have all the resources and wraparound services necessary so that they can actually thrive in their area. And that might look different for different areas and different projects, depending on scale and who the local business owners already are. Maybe legal services, financial services, mentoring services, accession, et cetera. There's a lot of different ways to address this, but making sure those small businesses have what they need to thrive is going to be essential. Our second pillar is employment and workforce development. Just like we want our small businesses to succeed, we also want to make sure that the small businesses have all of the talent that they need to do their very best. We want to make sure that the already existing workforce has the skills and education necessary to help our small businesses thrive, and any businesses that are coming into an area for a developed area. That might look different depending on location, but again, examples could include apprenticeships, internships, and externships, making sure that the local talent pipeline is well built and well resourced so that they can help continue on the efforts. To lean off of the first 2 pillars, we go into our third one, which will be ownership opportunities and wealth generation. This is going to be imperative to make sure that all of the efforts and the fruits of the labors of those who have put forth the effort in time, skill, and resources are also able to, in the long term and intergenerationally, be able to have that continue to pass down, both from a knowledge base and an investment base as well. Fourth, housing for all, everyone, not just low-income housing, not just affordable housing, not just market rate housing, housing for everyone. Everyone on the entire income spectrum who wants to be within an area would be able to figure out ways, housing structures, and options for affordability so that they can stay in an area. Displacement and gentrification should be avoided at all costs, but in order to make sure we mitigate and allow for enough people to have enough social mobility, we have to make sure that housing is going to be available and affordable for those who want to stay in an area. Health and wellness. A lot of you already in the real estate industry know that there's a variety of different programs, including FitWell is one of them that comes to mind, for making sure that building occupancy and the occupants are going to be well taken care of in terms of health and wellness through natural lighting, et cetera, and a variety of other criteria. However, when we say health and wellness, we're thinking more holistically for the community aspect of it. We want to make sure that a community has all of the tools that they need in order to thrive both by health and by long-term wellness as well. This may look different in different areas. It might look like mental health services in some areas, primary care physicians in others. If you have an aging population, making sure there's some long-term care solutions available for them. For places that have younger families that are starting out with young kids, making sure there's childcare and services and enrichment programs and activities available. What it looks like for every community will look a little different depending on the needs of the community. But approaching health and wellness and making sure there's funding and operational support for all of the occupants of a particular community and development is going to be essential to make sure that community can thrive. And last but not least, our sixth pillar is environmental sustainability. Making sure that we learn from all of the programs and certification systems that came before us, and that we have all of the solutions that are going to be, from an environmental and climate change aspect, helpful and useful for both the building itself, the natural environment, and the occupants and those that are adjacent to it. This might include renewable energy, natural lighting, water conservation and energy conservation, et cetera. We'll definitely lean heavily on looking at the other environmental sustainability certifications, such as LEED, Green Globes, Built Green, et cetera, to make sure that we're hitting all of the major milestones that we need to hit. This is our framework of our 6 pillars. A lot of already existing programs look at 1 or maybe 2 out of these. We think we're novel in helping to make sure we're comprehensively looking at these together in a comprehensive scorecard that developers, investors can look at throughout the development of their project and figure out how they can maximize points in each one of these pillars. And of course, as this will be the inaugural version of our certification system, there will be room for improvement as we grow. So what are our next steps? Just to give you a snapshot of where we currently are. A lot of work to be done over the next couple of years, but we are currently in our development and implementation planning phase for our best practices, which will then go into our certification process. We are recruiting staff, consultants, and volunteers if anyone would like to reach out to us. We are doing interviews right now, both for consultants and for our founding committee members to help us. We want industry leaders from all over within the development industry, as well as community leaders, to step up and help us shape something that would be useful for everyone. On the most right-hand side, you'll also see some of the different agencies that we've worked with. We work with academia, with community, and with the development industry and the commercial industry as well. Thank you very much for your time, and I will pass it off to our founder of the LEEP initiative, Mr. Alan Dones, and he'll talk more about his experiences as a developer in his development company and some of his projects. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Anna. Really appreciate your great way of presenting our LEEP initiative. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and thank you for allowing us to be part of this very important program today. My name is Alan Dones, and I'm the managing partner of Strategic Urban Development Alliance. We are a development company based here in Oakland, California. Primarily, we, describe ourselves as focusing on public-private partnerships. Most of our projects involve some amount of public land that we gain control of, and we develop that land, taking on not only the opportunity that comes to build vertical and enjoy the profits of real estate, but we also know that we take on the responsibility of that public land and making sure that that public land is developed to its highest and best potential, but most of all, for the public good. And right now, for the public good, that means beyond environmentally appropriate and beyond highest and best use. That means developing the land in a manner that particularly takes people that have been historically underutilized, not included in the development process, and developing the project with a prioritization on inclusion and a prioritization on the principles that Anna laid out. So we are working on our development and the evolution of the LEEP initiative in a manner that not only addresses the challenges of inequality here in Oakland, but we're trying to promote policies, practices, and principles that have global applicability. And in that regard, we've gotten the attention and have entered into collaborations with the Vatican, the United Nations, and other global and national institutions. And we're looking forward to the ability to promote and curate best practices that will be helpful in addressing the challenges of inequality on a global scale. Particularly here in Oakland, we have a community that's full of irony. It's a community that has seen the rapid evolution of its skyline over the last 5 years. When you look at the skyline and the growth of it, one of the factors is that in a city that's over 50% people of color, the people that have been at the helm of the transactions that have developed that skyline have not been comprised of a demographic that reflects the city of Oakland. It's been predominantly white male controlled in terms of who decides what's going to be built, who has the opportunity to decide who's going to build it, who's going to own it, who's going to manage it, maintain it, who it's going to be designed to attract, to live and work there. And in a city that's over 50% people of color, the last 100 cranes that have gone up, not one has been controlled by an African-American-led team. And there's been about 150 major projects that have recently been introduced and are on track. And there's about 3 of them that are controlled, at least when I put this slide together, that were controlled by African Americans. One of those groups has recently lost the control of its opportunity. So the problem is still a big challenge for us, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Real estate is the largest asset class in the United States. It's the facilitator of economic self-sufficiency, wealth creation, and as Anna pointed out, intergenerational wealth transfer. It has opportunities to do all that through careers, small business, and ownership. And for the most part, as my last slide showed, Black people have been left out, as well as people of color in general. There's a huge amount of gender and race inequality in the leadership of these projects. And right now, we need leadership in our community that reflects the demographic of the community. My firm right now is in a form of leadership on 3 projects right now that have a total of over 14 million square feet of development envelope potential. One project is Mandela Station. We'll talk a little bit about that today. Another project, the East Line, which is in downtown Oakland, and then a large project that we are working with an African-American oriented team to develop the Oakland Coliseum site, where our Major League Baseball and other professional sports franchises have played. We've recently lost the Raiders, and the Warriors moved to San Francisco. We have a baseball team remaining, but they are going to move to another site in Oakland. So that big 120-acre site is one that now has recently been awarded to an African-American-led team, much for the reasons and the objectives we're talking about today. All of these projects are transit-oriented. They're based on they're located near BART stations or actually on BART station sites. So the main project I'm going to focus on today is what we call Mandela Station, and that's at the West Oakland BART station. But again, when you have this inequality that's being perpetuated from the lack of participation by people of color, you have a lot of problems. The biggest problem is that the skyline grows, but the homeless camps grow even faster. Ironically, a lot of these homeless camps are located on, around, and under transit sites, BART sites. And Oakland, like many urban cities, is battling people that are most vulnerable being pushed out of their economic circumstances that allow them to enjoy a home and pushed into housing uncertainty. And unfortunately, when you see these homeless camps, they're only the tip of the iceberg, because between where their circumstances are and those of us that are housed, there are many different gradations of housing instability. People that have had to move back in with their parents, people that live in houses built for a single family being shared by multiple family members. And there's just many different areas, people sleeping couch to couch. So what the solution is that one of the solutions that we're trying to promote is more Black cranes, more Black people that are involved in this process of development, so that we can actually enjoy all the benefits of deciding who's going to design it, who's going to build it, who's going to own it, operate it, and really being able to enjoy the recycling of the economy and the dollars that are so important to not only our participation, but also the healthy functioning of our local economy. So one of the things we need is access to the capital. We need to utilize public land to the greatest extent possible to achieve some of this. And we need to just make sure that as we go about the process of developing our projects, we're building in these principles of LEEP, and we're coding them in from the earliest stages, the DNA of the project. So early community outreach, Anna talked about that. That's essential. All of our projects, we do a lot of community engagement. And before we actually, show fancy pictures, we take in input before we even start drawing. And then typically we'll re-engage with the community and come back, tell them what we heard. We'll use technology, word clouds, and other ways of making sure that we've gotten a good cross-section of what the community wants. And then we engage from that point on throughout the project, coding into the DNA, the ability for people to be trained in all of the key essential functions around real estate. We provide funding support to support the initiatives, to support ownership, to support a small business. We do that by collaborations and with other entities, community-based lenders, et cetera, bringing them in early on. We also make sure that we structure our transactions as we go about procuring our design services, procuring our construction services. We structure our transactions in a way that allows for the greatest amount of small business participation and these equity outcomes to be embraced and incorporated throughout the development of the site. And the other thing that we are really excited about is that we deploy technology. Real estate is a big deployer of cutting edge technology. And a lot of our projects provide a platform for introducing the technologies of the future, whether it's in design technologies, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, not only integrating those into our designs and engineering of the project, but also making sure that we position people within our community to get access to those technologies of the future that are going to represent the future of our economy. So these are the actual efforts that we engage in. And I'll just show a little bit of the Mandela Station project. So again, this is one of our three main projects right now, right at the West Oakland BART station. This project is 7 minutes away from the downtown San Francisco Financial District. It's a station that has about 250,000 pass-through trips a day prior to COVID. And our project consists of 240 affordable units, 520 market rate units. We also have 300,000 square feet of life science R&D that we're building at the site. And we're, again, developing this mixed-use transit-oriented development in a manner that prioritizes from the outset, just like we're making sure that our project is ADA compliant, making sure our project is seismically set. We're making sure that our project also embraces all these principles of equity and inclusion. And so that's our West Oakland project. That's generally one of the three projects, how we're going about it. There's the other three projects. I won't go into depth on them now, but that's illustrative. We think that these projects are going to provide what Anna talked about, one of the testing grounds so we can prove some of these principles so that we can deploy some of these practices at scale, enough to make a difference here, enough to make an economic difference in our region. And we welcome going forward the participation of all people that are participating in this program and this conference. And this program is one that belongs to the world. It does not belong to us. So going forward, we hope that we will be able to get the wisdom and feedback, participation, and the embrace of these principles at the least for the great projects that all of you are working on as well. So with that, I will turn it over to Derrick, and thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Alan, for that amazing presentation. I really enjoyed the presentation and connected with your thoughtfulness and intentionality behind your work. I really can feel the passion, but also see it in how you guys approach your work. And I think that's the type of development that we need to see. In cities like yours, but really in cities across the nation. So I share in that passion and partner with you from the other side of the coast in Pittsburgh, arm in arm, step in step, bringing that same kind of intentionality. So with that, my name is Derrick Tillman. I'm president and CEO of Bridging the Gap Development. We are a real estate development firm based in Pittsburgh, and our mission is to bridge gaps of opportunity, and also to bridge gaps in development. So when we say bridging gaps of opportunity, really focused on creating opportunities for minorities, for women, as well as the local residents and communities that we serve. And then bringing catalytic, transformative development projects to different communities, both communities that are already thriving, as well as communities that are in transition. We do that through affordable housing, we do market rate, we do mixed income, we do commercial real estate projects, which includes retail, office, mixed use, as well as community and cultural space. So this is a presentation for the Passive House Network. And what I would like to do is really just take you on a brief walk down memory lane. So what you see here, you see kind of little Derrick in the top left, high school Derrick in the middle, over a friend's house. And, we grew up in, very, very modest means, in poverty, in neighborhoods that were impoverished, throughout Pittsburgh and Allegheny County. I listed here the HACP Housing Authority, City of Pittsburgh, and Allegheny County Housing Authority, because I grew up on Section 8. We grew up in poverty and really felt the sting of what it feels like to have and to live in neighborhoods that have been plagued by disinvestment, neighborhoods that have been plagued by homelessness and drugs and alcohol and other types of things, lack of opportunity, that go on in our communities, and predominantly African-American communities. And we moved a lot. So I list here the neighborhoods that I lived in growing up. If you live in Pittsburgh, you'll recognize some of these neighborhoods. We lived in Homewood, Larimer, East Liberty, the Hill District, Rankin, Williamsburg, Oakland, Penn Hills, Highland Park, Black Ridge, just to name a few. I went to 3 different elementary schools, 2 different middle schools, and 2 different high schools. And the reason why was because, one, my mom was really intentional about trying to put us in the best possible situation. So, really ensuring that I didn't get caught up in the wrong crowd or the streets, but also other times we were displaced. New landlord buys the building, wants to raise the rent double, and we can't afford that. Or some other form of displacement that happened. But throughout this journey of moving a lot, I also got a chance to see a lot of different neighborhood dynamics. We lived in low-income neighborhoods, middle-income neighborhoods, and some higher-income neighborhoods. And I really got to see how different folks lived. I got to understand what a community looks like in middle-income area. When folks have cars, we didn't have cars, and a lot of my friends in some of the lower income areas, but just really those different neighborhood dynamics, seeing a community that was taken care of and invested in, and how that impacts your feeling, your well-being, even your health. And I got to see that firsthand. And it's a lot of these childhood experiences that really guide my work. The Pittsburgh Post-Gazette did a few articles about Pittsburgh being a tale of 2 cities. And they interviewed 2 different people, and you heard 2 different Black people. You heard very different stories. Many American cities experiencing gentrification, many people of color and lower income residents in the Steel City are getting priced out of their homes. Fancy new eateries and tall, shiny high rises are starting to pepper predominantly Black neighborhoods like East Liberty. They interviewed a local native and a transplant from DC, and they had very different perspectives on who's being elevated by the progress and who's getting pushed out of the city. And in this same community that I also used to live in was Penn Plaza. It's a vivid example of gentrification and displacement where, landlord decides just randomly that I want everybody out, and I'm redeveloping, demoing the building, over 200 residents just displaced instantly to build, market rate apartments and market rate commercial. Also, Pittsburgh is known as the most livable city, but not for Black women. Pittsburgh is actually the worst place for Black women to live in just about every indicator of livability, says the Gender Equity Commission. In light of all these things that are happening in our city, I still see a bright future. I still see what's possible because I believe that when you have the right folks leading the charge, you have the right folks, really guiding the bus, that we can bring economic opportunity, we can rebuild our communities, and we can create opportunity. And I see that. I see what I notice as the castle in the midst of the swamp. And that's not only guided by my personal and lived experiences, but also my Christian faith, which also reminds me that we are to care for the least of these. So here you see a project in Pittsburgh, which is, a dilapidated building, which there's a plethora of these in cities across America, where you have buildings like this where it collapsed in on itself, and it's really a health hazard. It's a danger, drug needles, and just for kids to even have to walk past these types of places and spaces, it impacts their health as it is a social determinant of health. So we reimagined this building, and we ended up demolishing it because it couldn't be salvaged. And we built 36 units of new Class A affordable housing. We really raised the bar on affordable housing from a design perspective, from an energy efficiency and sustainability perspective, as well as, really designing these units to look like market rate. And we didn't just build the building, but we also built the people with a robust, innovative, supportive services program that partners with the affordable housing that we developed. And here is a rendering of that completed development project known as the Miller Street Apartments in the Hill District. Here's another project in Homewood. Homewood is an inner city neighborhood where a lot of those conditions that I talked about exist. And we're working with a community organization known as Homewood Community Sports. And they came to us, really because they were trying to get, a scoreboard and just some grass, planted on their football field to fill in some patches. And that they have been trying to get this done for decades. And they came to me and said, can we help with this? And I said, absolutely. But not only should we be thinking about not just getting those things, but we really need to be reimagining this whole area to be a place that has impact for, just the entire community. So I helped them to reimagine what was possible, to not only get a new scoreboard and some grass, but a brand new state-of-the-art football field, a brand new swimming pool, a playground, a cultural space, that we can have outdoor community events with the outdoor amphitheater, also to add movies in the park, for the community. And a state-of-the-art football field with, seating, with a walking path, with amazing landscaping, really just a place to make the children feel safe from, what goes on in other parts of the community. This is really a safe space because the program is already doing amazing things. But that paired with, this kind of development is really what's needed. And being intentional about embedding culture into the design so that it really sends a message that this is for us. And this is, really to celebrate our history and our culture, not to remove it, but to celebrate it and elevate it. And lastly, I just want to touch on a project known as Fifth and Dinwiddie that we're developing in a community called Uptown, just down from the Hill District. what you see is two developments, one on the east, one on the west. The east site is a mixed use, mixed income development, as well as retail space. What you see on the other side is a mixed use development, all office, including office, co-working space, retail, as well as a training program focused on clean energy jobs. With this development, we went through a very robust community engagement process, and the community had already went through a 2-year planning process to develop an eco-innovation district plan. And this really just shows how the project is consistent with that eco-innovation district plan, investing in sustainable infrastructure, providing choices in mobility, preserving and strengthening the existing community, encouraging balanced, equitable, and green development. Because Uptown is also a part of the Hill District, we also show alignment with the Greater Hill District Master Plan. And through all of our community engagement processes, we were able to develop this framework. So the family-friendly housing without displacement, economic empowerment, commercial development, and building on the African-American legacy, just to name a few. This really just shows how the projects are also consistent with the UN SDGs, the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, where it weaves through all these different components, whether you're talking about good health and well-being, sustainable cities and communities, or really also reducing fuel poverty and enhancing equitable indoor air quality. Both projects will be certified passive house. Both projects will be Fitwell certified. Fitwell is based on public health research, reduces morbidity and absenteeism, supports social equity for vulnerable populations, and really it's just about developing healthy communities, reimagining what that means. And then both projects will be Reset Air certified, which focuses on equitable indoor air quality. As we say at Bridging the Gap, we don't just build buildings, but we also build people, which ultimately builds stronger communities. So there's a commitment to providing a lot of opportunities for MWBEs. We've already hired an MBEGC on the east side, representing a $12+ million development project. There's community opportunity, as well as mixed income housing and some commercial space. And then really that intentionality around comprehensive equitable development. We're restoring an underutilized public works building. And this is really just a high level, top-notch sustainable development being led by a Black developer. That's really important that we are a part of this process, but not just a part of it, but leading it. And this is just one example of that high quality design as well as construction. And then creating a community hub of opportunity for local small businesses and community-based organizations that have state roots and a rooted presence in the community. We're also doing retail that everyone can be excited about supporting. One example of that is we're working with a group called Catapult, and they do incubation, small business incubation and acceleration, where they're doing a youth program for youth entrepreneurs. And those youth entrepreneurs will have retail space within our development. So we're very excited about that. Engaging local artists as well to have the opportunity to showcase public art and a public plaza that will really bring people together and provide community. This shows that public plaza area in between the east and the west side, which is really intended to be a place where we can have outdoor events, where we can have community events. Again, a place for placemaking and really bring people together to provide community, whether you live here, work, play, etc. This is the existing East Site building, and this is what that building will look like once it's developed. So again, a renovation of the existing building, which is 20,000 square feet, adding a 20,000 square foot building, 20,000 square foot addition. And again, that includes commercial office space, co-working space for some small businesses. Retail will have a coffee shop, and then again, a training center focused on clean energy jobs. We will be teaching things like how to install solar panels, how to install electric vehicle charging stations. And the thought behind that was, recognizing that there has to be major economic opportunity, not only in construction during pre and post, but also how can we serve this community beyond the construction life cycle? And that training program will do just that. So on the west site, which is 171 units, mixed income, 80% market rate, 20% affordable. We didn't want to have, a poor floor or necessarily an affordable building in this case, but really a truly mixed use, mixed income development. So this just shows equitable unit distribution throughout the building. Here's a rendering of the west site. Again, the 171 units, along with the 12,000 square feet of retail space, 2 buildings connected by a sky bridge. Here's a rear of that sky bridge. In between the 2 buildings is this alleyway called Our Way. And we saw the opportunity to rebuild this infrastructure, but also to have this as an extension of that public plaza area. So you can see how we're developing that street with public art in the rear of the building, outdoor seating, state-of-the-art lighting, as well as landscaping that really, rebuild this area as well. Here's some interior views of the spaces. And here's a landscape plan. We'll have a roof terrace, outdoor living room that I talked about in that public plaza, high performance windows, of course, utilizing passive house, scooter and bike share. There will be a BRT shelter. The BRT, for those that don't know, is the bus rapid transit, which will connect Oakland to downtown. We're situated right between Oakland and downtown and uptown, which are the 2 biggest economic generators in Western PA. So really, this will be highly public accessible for transportation, but also connecting folks to opportunity, not just the opportunities within this site in our training, but opportunities in Oakland and downtown, as well as landscaping throughout the site. One other element we're excited about is to work with these 2 local artists, Mo and Charlotte, to integrate public art throughout the development with true intentionality. Mo actually is an artist as well as a jazz musician, and he learned to play jazz in Our Way, that alleyway that we built. And he played jazz with some of the national greats. If I mentioned some of their names, you would recognize right in this alleyway. So to have him to be a part of the development and to be doing some of the design as it relates to public art, we're very excited about. One piece specifically, he talked about, there was a song that they liked, and he used to always say, hey man, play that number, man, play that number. So one of the pieces is a curated piece of art called Play That Number, Man. So with that, I just want to thank you all for your attention and your time to come to our presentation. And with that, we'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.